This changed my brain chemistry for the worst. The author infused the ink of the page with cocaine. Everybody is an asshole. Hi, welcome back. Does my camera hate this white shirt? Yes, indeed. I need to talk about all the books that I've read in spring. I've kind of avoided doing a wrap-up these past few months. And I think I was so focused on doing like reading vlogs and like chill reading vlogs that I just kind of forgot. Honestly embarrassing on my part. I had a feeling that I had read like 1 or 2 books and then I read like 10. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes I'm in the mood to read and I don't realize that I'm reading like a fuck ton of books. And I've also chosen the only rainy day to film, so you know, wonderful. Let's start in chronological order, shall we? Aficionados of this channel will know that I am a Robin Hobb stan. I don't just love her books, I love them. Even though not all of her books are 5 stars, I've read like 6 of her books, I read 2 trilogies. If you don't know, she writes high fantasy connected trilogies. I read the entirety of the Liveshiptraders trilogy. I have a vlog in which I read the last book of the series. I'm going to just, you know, this one. Impeccable, insanity. This changed my brain chemistry for the worst. This is a series about pirates, among other things. It's a series about an entire family. It's a very core book. You follow a lot of characters that are very 3D. They're written so good, and it's about magical ships who are sentient and also dragons. I cannot tell you anything about the plot. Everything is a spoiler, even without context, and you don't realize that it's a spoiler until the end. I was spoiled and I did not know how I was spoiled, but I was, from Tumblr. I think I gave the first and last book, this one, 4.5 stars, and the second book 4.25. The second book was definitely the more aimless. The plot thins a little bit in favor of character development, which was very needed. The amazing thing about this book, not only is a wonderful fantasy series, is the writing. For once, it's amazing. I am never going to write as good as Robin Hobb, never. But also characters who you really hate in the first book are going to be your favorite characters in the last book. Malta starts as a very noisy, whiny, smart-ass kid, very deep into her patriarchal ass dad. And then she becomes the main character, like my main heroine, my girl. She becomes my girl. Safe to say, I really enjoyed the series. It's very long, but it's worth it. I took a much needed break from high fantasy 700 pages books, and I read a webtoon. I read all of the Semantic error chapters. This talks about our main character who is autistic coded. Like, they never say that he has autism, but he is autistic. Like, I know it, you know it, we know it. And he is a programmer. He wants to build a video game. He doesn't have like the design skills, so he hires a designer, and he meets this designer, and then he realizes this kid is the one who he got expelled from a class and got him to push back his graduation for a year. So they don't like each other, like they do not like each other. It's kind of a situation of enemies to lovers. This designer hates his guts, and he does everything in his power to like disrupt his day in the littlest things. Like the main protagonist's least favorite color is red, and the designer comes to his class even though he does not have to attend, dressed in head to toe in red. It's petty. It was so worth it for the romantic relationship to develop at the end. I really enjoyed this. I, however, think some of the plot points were a little bit rushed, especially at the end. So I give it 4 stars overall. I really liked it. It was fun. And then I read another manga. I needed something light and something queer, so I read Even If There's No Rainbow Tomorrow by Noriko Kihara. This is about a drag queen. I love mangas about drag queen. Our protagonist works as a drag queen in a bar, and he also chats online with people who are anonymous. And it's one of those chat rooms in which you can also like call people to hear their voice. And he is falling in love with this straight boy. He knows he's straight. And this straight boy comes to his bar one day and recognizes his voice. He's also very bigoted. It's a story about overcoming, prejudices and bigotry, and it's very heartwarming. It's a single volume, but it has like other volumes tied to it with other characters. It's short, it's sweet, it's also very like, if you love a male of interest that grovels, this manga, definitely. And then I did the unthinkable. I did something that I shouldn't have done, but I needed to do it. I have a blog in which I reread one of my favorite series of all time, which is the All for the Game series. If you know this series, it's one of those series that everybody says it's pure crack, like it's a drug. The author infused the ink of the page with cocaine. How should I describe this series to you? It's about a made-up sport called Xe that's like kind of like lacrosse indoors, and about a kid who is wanted because he is the son of a famous serial killer, and his mother took our main protagonist and ran with a lot of money, so the mafia is out to get him, and also his father. So against all intelligent thinking, he joins a pro athlete team for this sport called Xe, and the plot goes from there. The list of trigger warnings for the series is so long, it rivals the Puppy War. I wouldn't exactly recommend this series. It's one of my favorites of all time for reasons, but I think if you have to read it, you have to, one, read it when you're 16 and you don't know better, or read it when you're 25 and you do know better and you're reading for the 5th time. And also you have to read it digitally. I think this is a purely digitally series. So I gave the first book 4.25, second book 5 stars, and the third book definite 5 stars, my favorite in the series. And then why did I reread my favorite series that it's such trauma bonding with other people who read it? Because the author, like 8 years later, decided to write another book about other characters. Did she give a notice to everybody? No. She just, said, I'm writing another book, and then I'm dropping the book. Thank you, Nora. So I read The Sunshine Court, the first book in this, like, another duology. And it follows Jean, who I call Jean. Don't come for me, his name in my mind at 16 was Jean. After all the trauma that he suffers through in the main series, he goes to another team from the Ravens, and he goes to the team that Jeremy Knox is in. Very heartwarming. There's barely any plot. It's just like healing from trauma. I give it 4.25 stars. It's the beginning of something that is going to be very interesting later on. Again, very traumatic. Very, very much traumatic. Then I was on a queer books about sports kick, like queer books in general, and I had the displeasure of reading Café con lychee by Emery Lee. Yeah, this was a disappointment on all fronts. This is a YA book talking about 2 kids who are from rivaling cafes, like restaurants. It's never really fully explained if they are cafes or restaurants. I assume they are cafes because it's in the title, but you never know. And they are both experiencing like financial loss. So their families are cutting down, and they are rivals because no true explanation. They begrudgingly team up and like develop this food service system at school, which is very illegal, but they do it anyway. And there's also like a subplot about one wanting to do ballet and the other one being just like obnoxious and good at sports. It was very lackluster on all fronts, too many plot points. The crux of this book is that everybody is an asshole. I hated everybody. With reasons, because everybody's a fucking asshole. The protagonist, the other protagonist, and they have chemistry because there's no chemistry. They fall in love just because, plot reasons. The secondary characters were assholes, and the parents were assholes, and also stupid. I really hated this book. I gave it 1.5 stars. And then I was like, I need something good. Please give me something good. So I took to the audiobook sphere. I have Storytel, so I listened to Icebreaker. Not the one that you're thinking about, the other one by Grazie Dei, the gay one, if you will. This book is about 2 kids who play hockey. They are on the cusp of going pro. There's only one spot though for this very prestigious team. One comes from a very privileged position. His family is all about hockey. His dad plays hockey, his grandpa plays hockey. They're very rich. He also has like 5 sisters. They're all athletes. And the other one comes from a normal family. He suffered an injury, so he's recovering from that, like mentally and physically. And they hate each other guts, but this time within reasons. The chemistry within this book was so palpable, so good. I was invested. I don't like hockey. I was invested in the hockey practice, not even the matches, the practice. I was also very invested in the sisters because there's this talk about, you know, misogyny in the sports world, especially where media is involved. There's also like talks on Twitter and like other social medias. I really appreciated this. I really like this. I gave this book 4.5 stars. And I was mentally preparing myself to finish this third book, and I was like, I need something light right before and something nerdy. So I started Dungeons and Dragons. I thought it was going to be a very cute YA book about a girl who likes theater and a guy who likes Dungeons and Dragons coming together and falling in love. And it kind of was. They were fake dating to make like each other's ex jealous. I get that we are in the point of view of the girl who likes theater, so we get a lot of theater and a lot less Dungeons and Dragons. I'm a theater fiend. I also play Dungeons and Dragons. I'm like the complete nerd. I should have loved this book. Unfortunately, their writing was so cringy millennial, trying to write kids in high school. They were not believable, even in the like absurd situation of a YA book. They were not. Also, like, they played Dungeons and Dragons on page 2 times and off page a couple of times, and that's it. And in the beginning, you're thinking like, oh, so the campaign is going to play a part on the plot. And then it's not. And then you're like, oh, so the musical is going to play a part in the plot. And like, kinda, but it's so irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. Like, it was poorly plotted, poorly written. I guess it was fun. I skim-read like the last third because I was just bored. I gave it 2.5 stars, rounded up by 3. And then, baby oh baby, this book came out. And you know, I'm in Italy, I'm an Italian kid. I found it the day it came out. Funny story by Emily Harry at my local bookstore. I was like, this is a sign. They are looking out for me, the gods. I need to read this. I started reading Emily Harry's books with Beach Read and then People We Meet on Vacation. And then book lovers took me by the throat and was like, you are going to love this book. And I did. And then Happy Place came out and Happy Place said, you're going to love this book. And I did. And I also cried. Funny Story is very lighthearted in comparison to Happy Place. This is like the perfect balance with a heavier, you know, more personal and emotional love story and a funny love story, because these people are also fake dating to get back at their exes, because the main protagonist, Daphne, was going to get married, but then her fiancé left her for his girl best friend, who he's always talked about as like, just my sister. She's like my sister, don't worry about it. And then they get together and they're engaged after a month and they live in Italy like they're happily ever after, leaving Daphne to weep. And also the girl best friend's boyfriend gets left for dead in the middle of the road. And so Daphne and the ex-boyfriend of the girl best friend decide to room together because they don't have the money to not do that. And they're slowly falling in love and they're pretending to date, and the sexual tension is so perfect, but also like the emotional connection that grows and grows and grows. I have a thing for men in books who are kind of a little bit pathetic. They're kind of losers, and I love them, but they're also like very funny people, and they're not funny only with the protagonist. They're funny all around with even the secondary characters. I just love this. I think if you were burned by Happy Place with the emotional impact of the friendship story, Funny Story, this is going to be a book for you. Those 2 books are wildly different. I decided after Ship of Destiny, I needed something very trashy. I picked an Italian book. And you're thinking, Alice, why should I care about an Italian book? You're talking in English, you read in English. This was a Wattpad story. It comes from Wattpad. Why did I do this to myself? If you've ever read any books from the 2010s, or any fucking fanfiction from the 2010s, this book is going to be very reminiscent, because it talks about our protagonist, who, for some reason, the author is Italian, but it's all set in California with no knowledge of California. So our main protagonist has a single mom who has changed houses very frequently for her job. She's a photographer, I think. And so right now they're in California in a private school that is like a Victorian red brick house. Victorian red brick house in California. and she obviously meets like the mean girls and the bad boy, but this time the bad boy really is a bad boy. We switch characters POV very frequently and very randomly, and this bad boy, it's not a bad boy because he's like snarky and all of that. No, he gets into fights, he shoots people with guns, sometimes he is a drug dealer, but he's a softie inside. He's also very misogynistic, and uses his hypersexuality due to trauma to get him what he wants from people. Yeah, the author tried to, touch on very sensitive topics such as, bipolar disorder and hypersexuality because of trauma, and, homophobia because there's a queer couple, a very terrible queer couple, very terrible representation. But she failed. She failed on all fronts, except for the writing. The writing actually flows really well, but she writes about things that are inanely cliche. I give it 1.5 because I was so entertained by the random fuck-ass things that happen. There's also like one chapter in which it gets revealed that one of the mean girls, the main characters befriend gradually, has a student-teacher relationship with one of the teachers, and then it never gets mentioned again. I think the author, since it was a Wattpad book, so it was published chapter by chapter, I think she forgot. I think she completely forgot. Then technically I read this at the beginning of June, but I started it in May. I read a book that is so weird and so fundamentally tied to the online spaces that if I say RPF fanfiction and it means nothing to you, this is not going to be the book for you. I saw a lot of review of Idlewild by queer people who told the audience that this was the book that really spoke to them, especially trans people. And then a lot of, cis straight reviewers who I actually follow like on YouTube and stuff, they were like, this is a book about too many stuff, this was so random, this was so weird. And I think this is the experience that you're going to get. I'm a non-binary person, I grew up on the internet, so this book was for me. This also talks about theater, like heavily musical and musical theater. This story talks about a deep, obsessive and intense friendship between Nell and Faye. Nell, the only lesbian at this like Steinerin school. It's one of those schools where you don't get graded. Faye, who is a trans man, and Faye discovers this about himself playing Iago in the Othello. Their friendship comes and goes within a year, and it's so tied to like 3 a.m. phone calls and writing back and forth on MSN up until 2 a.m. and also meeting these 2 other kids who are new to this school and writing a real people fiction about them being gay. Embarrassing, yes. Awkward, also yes. So interesting, obviously. It's also like the background is 9/11 because this is right after 9/11 and how everybody coped with it differently. So 9/11 is so far removed from my reality. This was so intriguing. If you love obsessive relationships of friendship within your books, if you love like these violence delight, this is going to be the book for you. It's also very dense and very tied to the fanfiction world. It put me in a mental space that I was not into since, I don't know, 2010, which was exhilarating and awkward and fun. And also, frightening. I gave this book 4.5 stars. These were all my spring reading. I'm sorry that I didn't have the time to do a little bit of a wrap up sooner, and you have to like watch 28 minutes of me talking about books. Oh my god, let's just end it here. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please keep a lookout for the next one. I have some socials if you want to like connect with me. I have them down below, and if you could like subscribe to the YouTube stuff, I'd be very grateful, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Mwah!